The Partition of India, 1947. The Partition of India in 1947 was a watershed moment in South Asian history, shaping the destinies of over 1 billion people and leaving an indelible impact on the region. This event divided British India into two independent nations, India and Pakistan, and was accompanied by unimaginable communal violence, mass migrations, and enduring political and social implications. Rooted in decades of colonial policies, rising nationalist aspirations, and religious divisions, the partition remains a topic of profound interest and reflection for historians, educators, and history enthusiasts alike. Understanding its context, causes, and consequences provides crucial insights into modern South Asia's complexities. British dominance in India began in the 18th century under the East India Company, transitioning to direct crown rule in 1858 following the Indian Rebellion of 1857. While the British justified their rule through claims of modernization, their policies often fostered division rather than unity. By emphasizing differences among India's diverse communities, chiefly along religious lines between Hindus and Muslims, they sowed the seeds of discord. For nearly 2 centuries, India's vast resources, workforce, and markets were exploited to serve British imperial interests. Simultaneously, their divide-and-rule policies widened social and political rifts, ensuring Indian societies could not unite against the colonial power, a factor crucial in shaping partition decades later. By the late 19th and early 20th centuries, anti-colonial movements began to gain momentum. The Indian National Congress, ANC, established in 1885, spearheaded the freedom struggle, advocating a united secular India. On the other hand, Muslim leaders feared marginalization in a future independent India led predominantly by Hindu politicians. This led to the formation of the Muslim League in 1906, aimed at protecting Muslim interests within India's colonial framework. Tensions increased as differing visions of India's post-colonial future crystallized. While the INC promoted a unified nation, the Muslim League, under Muhammad Ali Jinnah, began to advocate for a separate homeland for Muslims. This divide in nationalist aspirations lies at the core of partition. By the 1930s, the idea of a separate Muslim state, initially a radical proposal, gained traction. Muhammad Iqbal, a philosopher and poet, was among the early proponents of an independent Muslim polity. Jinnah later championed this cause, claiming that Muslims formed a distinct nation whose cultural and religious identity could not flourish in a Hindu-majority India. The Lahore Resolution of 1940 formally demanded autonomous states for Muslims in India's northwestern and eastern regions. Although met with skepticism initially, events in the following years entrenched this demand, culminating in the call for Pakistan, a separate homeland for Muslims. The global backdrop of World War II, 1939–1945, profoundly influenced India's path to independence. Britain's war efforts heavily relied on Indian resources and soldiers, exacerbating discontent over continued colonial rule. The war also weakened Britain economically and politically, rendering it increasingly unviable to maintain control over its sprawling empire. As Britain focused on post-war recovery, Indian leaders saw an opportunity to demand independence. However, the war years also deepened Hindu-Muslim divisions, with the Muslim League becoming more assertive in its demand for Pakistan, setting the stage for partition. By 1946, Britain sought to ease its exit from India by proposing a federal structure under the Cabinet Mission Plan. While this plan aimed to keep India united, diverging approaches by the INC and the Muslim League led to its failure. For the League, an undivided India meant risking marginalization. For the Congress, federalization threatened national unity. This stalemate increased the inevitability of partition. Jinnah called for Direct Action Day on August 16, 1946, a demonstration to showcase the demand for Pakistan. Tragically, this day unleashed horrific communal riots in Calcutta, leaving thousands dead and tensions irreparably heightened. The violence starkly illustrated the growing animosity between religious communities and highlighted the inability of leaders to control escalating tensions. Lord Louis Mountbatten, Britain's last viceroy in India, proposed partition as the only feasible solution to end the escalating violence. The plan divided British India into two nations, India and Pakistan, along predominantly religious lines. To hasten the process and reduce further bloodshed, a goal that fell tragically short, Britain set an expedited timeline for independence, August 15, 1947, a date etched in history as both a triumph and a tragedy. The boundaries between India and Pakistan were hastily drawn by British lawyer Sir Cyril Radcliffe, who had no prior experience of India's complex geopolitical realities. His brief was to divide provinces like Punjab and Bengal based on religious, demographic majorities, but the lack of consideration for deep-rooted cultural, economic, and familial ties led to chaos. The resulting Radcliffe Line was finalized mere days before independence, sparking shock and confusion. On August 15, 1947, India gained independence as a secular state committed to diversity, while Pakistan was established as a homeland for Muslims. However, Pakistan was geographically divided into West Pakistan, modern-day Pakistan, and East Pakistan, modern-day Bangladesh, separated by India's landmass, a division that would later trigger its own conflicts. This moment marked liberation after 200 years of colonial rule, but it came with devastating human costs. Partition triggered one of the largest migrations in human history, with an estimated 15 million people displaced. Hindus and Sikhs fled to India, while Muslims migrated to Pakistan. Entire villages emptied as communities moved en masse, crossing newly formed borders with little planning or protection. This migration, far from orderly, was marred by violence, panic, and deprivation. Trains transporting refugees became sites of massacre, earning grim monikers like ghost trains. Families were separated, possessions lost, and lives destroyed, haunting reminders of partition's harrowing aftermath. Communal violence during partition reached staggering levels, with an estimated 1–2 million fatalities. Religious riots engulfed cities and villages, turning neighbors into enemies. Women, in particular, faced unimaginable suffering. Tens of thousands were abducted, raped, or killed. Such atrocities symbolized the immense human toll of the divisions fomented under colonialism and exacerbated in its hasty departure. Partition's economic effects were profound. Border regions like Punjab and Bengal, once thriving hubs of trade and agriculture, were torn apart, dealing blows to local economies. Shared cultural traditions were similarly fractured, as poets, writers, and musicians found themselves divided by geography and ideology. For many, the partition signaled a loss not just of homeland, but of heritage. A forced discontinuation of shared identities developed over centuries. India emerged as the world's largest democracy, committed to secularism and pluralism, despite internal challenges. Pakistan, meanwhile, declared itself an Islamic state, prioritizing religious identity to unify its population amid ethnic and linguistic diversity. Both nations faced monumental tasks of rebuilding amidst trauma and loss. Refugees, displaced from ancestral homes, struggled to start anew in unfamiliar lands, often with inadequate support. The princely state of Jammu and Kashmir became an immediate flashpoint. With a Muslim-majority population and a Hindu ruler, its accession to India sparked outrage in Pakistan, leading to wars and ongoing disputes. Kashmir remains a deeply contentious issue, fueling mistrust and contributing to South Asia's militarization. Partition's humanitarian crisis was unparalleled. Millions lived in refugee camps, enduring hunger, disease, and unemployment. Families permanently separated by borders grappled with the emotional devastation of loss and longing. For survivors, partition was not merely a historical event, but an enduring personal tragedy. Decades of hostility between India and Pakistan, marked by wars and an arms race, have defined the subcontinent's geopolitics. Partition also paved the way for Bangladesh's independence in 1971, as East Pakistan's linguistic and cultural grievances erupted into conflict. Both India and Pakistan celebrate their independence days with pride, but the shadow of partition looms large. Films, literature, and oral histories continue documenting its tragic human stories, ensuring history is neither forgotten nor repeated. Partition remains a subject of academic and artistic exploration, serving as a lens to examine colonialism's consequences, religious identity, and nationhood. Today, historians, activists, and citizens recognize the need for reconciliation. Initiatives aimed at improving India-Pakistan relations focus on shared challenges, from poverty to climate change. Dialogue, cultural exchange, and revisiting partition's lessons are central to envisioning a more peaceful future for South Asia. The Partition of India in 1947 is both a story of nation's birth and harrowing human suffering. It shaped the modern histories of India, Pakistan, and Bangladesh, but it also stands as a cautionary tale about the dangers of division and the fragility of peace. For history enthusiasts, partition offers a compelling subject, one that encompasses resilience, identity, and the profound interplay of politics and humanity. As we reflect on its legacy, it reminds us of the urgent need for understanding and healing in a world often divided by boundaries, both real and imagined.